Hi there, welcome to 90% Knitting. This is episode 340 something. I don't actually know what the number is because I didn't look it up. I don't have show notes. This is a really spur of the moment recording. I had the opportunity and I thought I better take it because I'm tardy in getting this out to begin with. And if I don't grab this chance, I may not get another one for a while. So hopefully we can make it through regardless of whether I have show notes or not. My name's Lisa. I am also Fiber Nymph on most of social media, and I am obviously in my porch room again, which I don't get to be in here very often, but my husband was kind enough to relocate for a couple of hours because I actually had to record a video before this earlier today for another project that I'm doing that is knitting related, but it's not specifically for the general public consumption of YouTube quite yet. Hopefully it will be eventually. It's something I'm doing for a local yarn shop who asked me to do a video on self-striping yarn. So I got done recording that earlier today, and so I said, well, hey, since I'm already set up out here, would you mind if I just did my podcast too? So he's kind enough to be sitting in the kitchen with his work table. Not prime for him because most of his stuff's in here, but hopefully he can hang out for another half hour or so while I talk to you guys. I'm sorry I've been absent for a while. I haven't been forgetting about you. I have filmed so many clips like in and around the yard and the garden and of some of the stuff we've been doing outside to the house, and I kept thinking, okay, I'm going to put together, just a little extras video. But what's been happening is the fact that my camera has not wanted to talk to my computer. I record on my phone, and the cord that I had that talks from my phone to my computer, it turned out to be the cord was the issue. I didn't know that. I just thought I was having some sort of other interface issue, and it was so frustrating because, quite honestly, for the past several months, as I've been doing episodes, the problem's been getting worse, and I'd record a podcast episode, and then it would literally take me hours of trying to get the camera, the phone, and the computer to talk to each other so that I could transfer the files. Because trying to do it like through the cloud and stuff takes forever. Like, I don't have that kind of time. But it was just taking hours, and it was just getting very, very defeating. And so I think that was also sort of sapping my recording mojo, because I just knew I was going to be fighting with technology trying to get the videos out. But lo and behold, I was able to get a new cord, and that solved the problem, and I can't tell you how happy I am about that. So at least fingers crossed that is going to solve the problem when I actually go to do this later today. Okay, so that's why I haven't been here. But since I have been able to now get all of that like footage of the yard and the garden and everything off my camera, I will put that at the end of this video, because otherwise I think it's going to probably be a little short. I am happy to say that my knitting mojo has sort of popped back up. I've been crafting more. Part of that was because I needed to knit up some samples for some things that I was talking about in that other video that I just referenced. So it was sort of, not obligation knitting, but it was necessity knitting in order to do that. However, I've also been working on some other things, most of which are not things I think I've even shown you yet. Well, maybe one of them. Anyway, I'm just going to show you what I've got, because they're all jumbled in a basket here, and we're just going to go with it. And I apologize, our next door neighbor is running a weed eater or something. I know it's very annoying, but hopefully you won't be able to hear it quite as loud as I can hear it. But yeah, it's too hot to be able to have the windows closed. I would be melting. So, hey, look, I've got a sock. It's a Shortie sock. This is actually a combination of two different colorways. I also got the second sock on the needles. As you know, this summer, I have not even this summer. It seems like ever since the pandemic and the stay-at-home stuff happened, I've really been on this kick of trying to use up leftovers. And I have a whole bunch of half skeins that were left over from, well, they may not all be half skeins, partial skeins that were left over from when I did the holiday mini sets 2 years ago, which are mostly variegated and tonal colorways. And so I pulled a couple of those off because they looked really good together. This was called Gilded Moss, I believe. And this was a variegated version of Don't Tell Him It's a Rainbow. And I thought, you know, those look really good together. And these were both dyed on my Linnaeus base, which is that darker yak colored base, or yak base. It's a darker colored base. Actually, that was when I introduced that base to the shop for the first time. That was in those, the holiday mini sets that year. Anyway, so I decided I was going to use these, and my original thought was to do the cuff in one color and then knit down, and then the heel flap and then knit down, and then the toe. You know, alternating the colors, which I did do. I used the mossy color for the cuff and the toe, and then I used the Don't Tell Him It's a Rainbow for the heel flap. But I ended up actually striping this. Like, I alternated the yarns every round. I just kept switching. I guess helically. I don't know. I didn't specifically do a helical kind of knitting thing with it. I just kept alternating and like making sure I was crossing over to continue to keep it together. I don't have any gaps, so I guess I did it okay. But yeah, that's what I did. So it's just a very, very micro striped kind of effect there that I did by using the two different colors. So these are not super exciting socks. I needed a sock project to work on one day when this was quite a while ago in the house project realm, when Bill was finishing up painting the one side of the house, and he needed me to spot what he was doing to let him know if he was missing anything, because it's the high end of our house and he couldn't see it being close up. So I basically sat out in our driveway in a yard chair one morning and worked on these socks. That's when they started, and told him, you missed a spot. So anyway, that's what the story is with those socks. This you have seen before. This is actually crochet. So this is my Granny Stripes Cardi. I think it has had some progress since you saw it last. Maybe not a whole lot, but this is where I'm at. I'm really enjoying it when I work on it. The rows are just long enough that I can get through one, maybe two, and then I'm kind of done with it. I'm enjoying it, but for whatever reason, I just don't have the motivation to do it for really long periods of time right now. If that makes any sense. So, yeah. But I'm basically using almost every single color of mini that I have in the shop, and I'm doing them all in the Mountain Tweed fingering, which is a lot of fun. And then I'm just using an undyed skein of the Mountain Tweed fingering for my alternating rows. So having a lot of fun with that. It'll get done eventually. It's just not been a priority. Pretty much not much of my knitting has been a priority this summer. Okay. Another project I started, I don't know when I started this. It's been a while, but it doesn't have a lot of progress. Is, I think it's called the Lounging Tee. It's a Joji Locatelli pattern. I wanted a really simple pattern to use with this yarn. So this is my Pouf base, and this is the blush colorway from the Color Play No. 3 collection. I've wanted to knit a sample for this to have in my booth for someday in the distant future when we start doing shows again. And so I thought this one would be a good candidate for this particular yarn. So here it is. You start at the top back and do the shoulders. There's some short row shaping for the shoulders, and then you work your way down the back until you get to the bottom of where the armhole will be. And then I believe you pick up on the top of the shoulder and do the same thing, knitting down the front to that point at the armhole, and then you join and work in the round. It's a drop shoulder thing, and you're knitting in. It's hard to see in this slubby base, but this is actually a ribbed edge here. So you're knitting the armhole ribbing integrally with the sweater or with the top as you're making the top. So it's cute, it's fun. There's really nothing exciting about this. Is the right side, so it's, you know, stockinette fabric. This is the reverse stockinette, but because it's got all those little slubs in there, you don't really, I mean, it's hard to see the difference, and you have to really look. But whatever. I think it'll be fun. I don't know how much wear I'll get out of it. This isn't really my color, but I like the color for the top. So anyway, it's cast on. Hopefully it'll make progress. I think this next thing I'm going to show you is probably the thing I have enjoyed knitting on the most at all in the last couple of months, and it's something that I just sort of started doing. Remember my big bin of DK and worsted weight scraps that I have been plowing through in the past, I don't know, 4, 6 months, however long it's been. How long has it been? I don't even know. 4.5 months now? I don't know. Okay. I decided to go into that again and start knitting a cowl. I had this idea. I wanted to do a stripy cowl with leftovers, using leftover yarn. But I didn't want to have to weave in a million ends. And I wanted it to be garter stitch. Okay? So here's all the parameters. Had to be garter stitch fabric. Had to be made out of scraps. 1 color per garter stitch round or row, garter ridge, which is going to leave me with a whole bunch of ends. See them? But I don't want to have to weave them in. That was my challenge. So here's what this first one looks like. This is just, again, a whole bunch of random DK weight colors that I had in my bin. And I used them all. I didn't do it in a regular repeating pattern on this one, I don't think. Did I? No, I didn't do it on the other one either. Anyway, whatever. But I did use them all fairly regularly. So this is what it ends up looking like on what you would normally consider the right side of garter stitch fabric. Okay, so you've got all your nice garter ridges, but then I've got all these ends on the inside. And the way I ended up doing this was, because I did not want to purl the second round to get those garter ridges, I wrapped and turned and then knit backwards. Or not knit backwards, but turned it inside out and knit the other way. So I was knitting both rounds, implementing a wrap and a turn to do that, which is not a novel idea. I mean, that's how a lot of things are done whenever you're doing garter stitch in the round. However, I was doing it so that the wraps and turns in both directions were sort of overlapping by 1 stitch. So you get this sort of, I don't know, it's sort of a little wave to it in the seamed area. I don't know how well you can see that. I think it looks better in person than it does on the camera right now, I'll tell you the truth. But then it dips down here, and then there's a dip up here as well. However, this isn't going to be the right side of the cowl per se. I want the inside to be the right side of the cowl. So here you have the reverse side of the garter stitch. So it almost looks like a linen stitch. That's what it reminds me of. It's kind of a linen stitch kind of look. It's not linen stitch, but that's what it reminds me of. And then you have all of your fringe, which is going to become fringe. Like all of your ends are becoming fringe because I've tied them off into knots. And you guys know how much I love my fringy cowls that I weave, and this is sort of a similar effect. So these are not trimmed, like these will be trimmed a little bit neater. They're not going to be all scraggly like that. But this is what it's going to look like. And so you'll have this fun, funky fringe over here, and then you'll have your reverse garter stitch fabric, and you've got your cowl. And I think what I'm going to do is I'm going to put like a little loop here and a little button over here so that if you want to close this up and have it be a little bit tighter fitting, okay, maybe I'll put the button down lower. Don't want to choke yourself. You could do that. And then it would keep you warmer and it gives you another way to wear it. Right? I love it. I just think it's so much fun. And my other concept, which I've not done a proof of concept because I haven't trimmed the fringe yet. But once you trim the fringe, if you wanted to wear it with this side out, you could. Your fringe will just kind of peek out the bottom, which I don't think is a horrible thing either. And you would still have your loop and your button if you wanted to do that. Although the button would be on the inside, so that might be awkward. I'm not sure. I'll have to play with that. But that's my idea. So I think this is going to become a pattern that I'm going to write up eventually. Yeah, it'll be fun. I've been designing a lot in my brain during this time of not knitting much and not podcasting much. But this one, I do have sort of a drafted pattern. And the other thing is, if you remember, I did that half a granny square shawl using all of that yarn from that bin. I'm telling you, there's hardly any yarn left in that bin at this point. And I had mentioned that I was probably going to dye up like sampler packs of a whole bunch of DK weight colors. I have a bunch of those dyed. I think I have 6 sets worth dyed. I haven't yet decided if I'm going to package them, because there's 24 of them, and I don't know if I'm going to package them in a whole big set of 24 or if I want to do maybe sets of 12 or sets of 6. I have to think about that yet. But those would be perfect too for this kind of thing. If you don't have a lot of DK weight scraps sitting around, because I know not everybody does. You might have a lot of fingering weight scraps, but the heavier weight yarns, sometimes you tend to use up most of what you've got. For whatever reason, I have tons of scraps. Don't much anymore. So this was the first one I did, and then I did a second one, which I love these colors. These are just such fresh, bright colors. So lots of greens and golds, and there's a sand in there that's my Beguiled base, the sparkly DK weight. You can kind of see it in there. So same thing. This side is your regular garter stitch side, and then this is that reversed garter stitch. Is there a word for reverse garter stitch? I mean, there's stockinette and reverse stockinette. Is there garter stitch and reverse garter stitch? I don't actually know that. I should probably find that out. If somebody knows, let me know. Anyway, and then my method of tying them worked out a little bit better on this one. I had to do the first one a couple of times before I figured out what I wanted to do. It's not super in-depth, but anyway. So yeah, there's another one. I just think it's so much fun. And it's very hot today, so the fact that I'm putting this on for you just tells you how much I love you. So I'm really enjoying these. I have a third one started, but I don't like it, so I'm probably not going to finish it. I only have like an inch of it done. I was trying something else with different yarn and not so many colors, but I don't like it because you don't get as much fringe that way. And having the integral fringe is part of this design, you know. You could do it just like in all one skein, but then what's the point? Because then you'd have to like fake the fringe after the fact. Unless you didn't want fringe at all. Okay, so there you go. That has been what I have been working on. Aside from, like I said, I knit some little sample things that I needed for this other video that I did, which eventually you will hopefully see that, or some iteration of that, and the samples. But for right now, that's all I'm going to show you, because that's really most of what I've been working on. Other than that, what has been taking up my time since I talked to you probably close to a month ago. It's been over 3 weeks, I know. The garden. The garden is just exploding. Matter of fact, the footage that I took about a week ago is probably totally different than what the garden looks like now. I might have to go down and take some new footage of it because I'm looking at it from here. It's gigantic. And like the sunflowers have not bloomed yet, but they have gotten so tall, even just since I was down there last night. The ones in the middle are like over my head now. Our flowers that are around the edge of the garden are just so bushy. Everything is bushy. The squash has taken over the world. We've gotten a bunch of zucchini, not an overwhelming amount yet, although I did go down one night and I found 2 zucchini that had been hiding underneath leaves, and they had gotten quite large. I like to pick them when they're about that big. These were this big. They get too seedy when they're that big, so I'll probably make bread or something out of those. But yeah, but the spaghetti squash plants, man, they have just taken over the world. They're probably going to take over our entire backyard and start, like, you know, attacking the cats soon. I don't know. But there are spaghetti squashes on the vines, which I'm super excited about. There's probably way more than I know that are there because I just can't see them all. But spaghetti squash are a winter squash, so you don't actually pick them until the end of the season when the plants die off, kind of the way you do with pumpkins. So then you pick them, and you can keep them for a long time. As long as you have a cool place to keep them, they'll harden off, and you can eat them all winter. So that's what we are looking forward to with those. My tomato plants are laden, like loaded down. The 4 that are like the big tomatoes, I had Mr. Stripey, and then I can't remember what the other variety is. They all have a ton of tomatoes, and some of them are quite sizable. None of my big tomatoes have turned red yet. None. Or have ripened. I don't know that they're all going to turn red. I don't know what color Mr. Stripey turns, to tell you the truth. Yeah, they're holding out on me. I don't know what their deal is. I figure they're probably all going to ripen like within the same 3-day period, and then I'm suddenly going to be inundated with a ton of tomatoes that I'm going to have to can, which is fun because I love canning tomatoes, but that historically usually happens on the same week that I'm suddenly inundated with a ton of yarn dyeing I have to do. So we'll see how that goes. I have gotten like a handful of cherry tomatoes, but again, the cherry tomato plants are they're full of tomatoes, but they're being really stingy about turning. The pepper plants, a couple of my pepper plants have tons of huge peppers. They're called Big Bertha, and they're supposed to turn like red and yellow. Huge, huge, huge green peppers, but they have not turned color yet. So I'm still waiting. I'm not going to pick them till they turn. Emma has a couple of hot pepper plants down there, which she has gotten peppers off of, and there's a lot more coming. Our herbs are all probably about, like, they're getting to the point where they're done. Like the dill has gone into seed. The basil is really starting to look raggedy. The cilantro is also going to flower right now. Emma's been picking her chamomile and drying it, and she's got some sage down there as well, which she has not done anything yet with. I think she's waiting a little while, and then I think she's going to pick it and dry it, and then, you know, like bind it up into like smud, like sticks, you know, the bundles that you set on fire and you can use in the house to smoke. I know it's called smudging, but smudging is a particular technique used by indigenous people, if I understand it correctly. So I don't want to use that term because obviously that's not what, she's not an indigenous person, so don't want to appropriate that. I think it's just called smoking, like, but not smoking. Hopefully you know what I'm talking about. Anyway, what else is down there? Oh, the beans are pretty much done. I don't think we're getting anything else off of them. I'm going to rip those plants out and probably plant some pea seeds in another month once it starts to cool off a little. So I can hopefully get a batch of late season peas. But yeah, it's going really well. I've loved being down at the garden. Spent a lot of time sitting down by the garden. It's so relaxing, especially first thing in the morning because our days have been so hot and humid, and it's just nice and cool in the mornings. So that's been lovely. We are, I would say, 98% finished with the house project. So happy. I think Bill's got all the painting done now, and our deck is finished. I will insert pictures of that, if not here, at the end of the video. We have all the decking down, the railings up, our sunsetter retractable awning is up, and we have been using it every evening. We go out there and have dinner. I sat out there yesterday afternoon because I was trying to finish up knitting some samples, and I was just sitting out underneath the awning. It was lovely. I'm so excited. I feel like a grown-up. I know that sounds silly, but I've never had a really nice porch or deck where I could go out and sit and feel like, oh, this is nice. Like, I'm not going to fall off the edge of it. I'm not going to fall through it. It's not kind of janky looking up above like my old deck was, or porch was, back at my old house. No, it's really nice. And so I felt like a lady of luxury yesterday, sitting out there midday on my deck furniture, which is not new. It was my old furniture from my house that I had on my porch. It came here and became deck furniture, and now it's on our nice new deck, but that's fine. I don't need new deck furniture. Underneath my sunsetter retractable awning, which I have now learned how to unretract it, like put it out by myself and can roll it back up. So yeah, and we have our bird feeders are now reaffixed to the railing posts. We did not have railing on our old deck, so now we have these railing posts, and the birds are just having so much fun out there. So far, fingers crossed, the raccoons have not come up onto the new deck. They were all about the feeder where I had it in the interim time down in the yard, and they were a riot to watch at night. But yeah, we have not seen any sign of them up here yet. The squirrels finally, just like yesterday or the day before, figured out that the feeders are back up here, but we don't really care about the squirrels. So that is all going well. What else? I've been doing other things other than crafting. I mean, obviously the gardening and the house stuff has been, a main focus this summer. Excuse me. I've been reading a lot. Some of the books. Okay, let me just explain this to you too. So as you know, my husband's been working from home since mid-March. We just found out today they're not having anybody go back to the office now until after the 1st of next year. So he's still going to be here in this room where I like to hang out and do my crafting and podcasting. He's going to be in here for the foreseeable future, which fine. Okay, I've adapted to that. Then, my daughter moved home back in mid-May, and so she has effectively taken over my office and yarn inventory room and everything. So that's made that a little bit interesting. But that was also the room that, when I wasn't able to hang out here, I'd hang out in there because there was a couch in there. Well, now I'm not in there. So I basically have no place to be. So I've kind of made my own little nest on my side of the bedroom. So between my side of the bed and the wall, I have just got stacks of books and stacks of baskets with yarn in them and projects, and a lot of times my laptop is teetering there, and so many things. Tarot cards, that's I'm not going to talk about that in this podcast. That's something that Emma and I have been kind of getting fascinated with. Is just, I have an obsession with tarot cards right now. Not doing a lot with them, but I love the artwork on most of them, and I've gotten fascinated with them. So I've amassed a little collection of tarot cards recently. So they're all piled up there so I can look at them when I want to. What else? Oh my gosh, just everything. I have all of my stuff there, but it's gotten to the point where there's so much stuff there that it's hazardous, and I'm probably going to get out of bed in the middle of the night some night and trip over something and break my leg or my neck because it's just kind of nuts. Anyway, but that's my spot. But anyway, I picked out some books. I'm going to show you some of the books that I have been reading and looking at, or have recently just gotten, because there's also been some retail therapy going on in the last couple of months when I have just been crazy. Okay, so this book, I've actually owned this book for a long time. This is called The Garden Primer by Barbara Damrosch. I love this book because it's completely revised Gardener's Bible. It's just got a lot of really basic information about a lot of different garden plants, both vegetables and flowers. It's definitely not the be all and end all to everything, but there's a lot of really good, helpful information. So I like to go to this book first to see if I can, get some sort of information that I need before I start searching elsewhere. So, but there's also a lot of stuff in here about lawns, about planting bulbs. I think she's got information in here about composting. She's got a lot of stuff in here about, natural pest management. The copyright on this was 2008, but I'm pretty sure this came out prior to that originally, because I feel like I bought a copy of it for somebody else one time. I don't have my glasses on, so I can't really see super well. But I love these. The drawings in it are really nice too. So anyway, I have been sitting in bed at night and referring to this off and on, looking for gardening information. Another book that I did get this recently, but like a couple of months ago recently, because I've been reading it, is The Wild Remedy by Emma Mitchell. And if you don't follow Emma Mitchell on Instagram, I would highly recommend doing so. Her Instagram feed is amazing. I'll try to put her Instagram name in the show notes, such as they're going to be. They're probably not going to be full show notes. But if you just look for Emma Mitchell, you'll find her on Instagram. Anyway, I heard about this book from Julie from Sweet Sparrow Yarns, Sweet Sparrow Knits podcast. She was talking about it, and so I picked up a copy, and it's been delightful. It's just talking about how nature mends us, a diary, and it's been really good. It's about, she talks a lot about how, she deals with depression issues, and some of that I can relate to. And I just love her reflections on how she's found nature very healing, because it's very reflective of what I have been finding healing this summer with our garden and just being outside more. So the first part of it is sort of general, and then it goes into the diary part with the different months. And so I jumped ahead and started reading the month that it was whenever I got to that point. So I did not read the first months, where I think it starts in maybe October. Yes, it starts in October. So I'm just going to read through the year as the months change. So I've read July, and in a couple days I will read August. Okay, a couple books that I just recently got and have not really read a whole lot, but I'm very excited about. The first one is called Nature's Garden by Samuel Thayer. He has a series of books out about plants that you can forage and eat that are good for you. And Maria from Ninja Chickens, she talked about one of his books on her last podcast. I don't believe it was this one. I think it was one of the other ones. But that was what spurred me to look into them, because I've been really interested in this topic lately. And what I really like about it is he's very in-depth. It's not just like, here's the plant, you can find it, this is what it looks like. No. He goes through a whole bunch of information about all of the plants. So, okay, here we have hackberry or sugarberry. And the nice thing, too, about his books is he covers plants from many different regions, so you're not getting a book that might have, most things from someplace where you don't live. Something is covered everywhere, or there are things that are covered for everywhere. So it's got basic information, then description, range, and habitat. Lots of pictures. History and lore, which I think is very cool. Harvest and preparation. Yeah, for that one, that's about it. Some of them, though, he has pictures. Like, he's got a lot of pictures of everything, but then if there are plants that might be easily confused with something that is poisonous, he makes a big point of pointing those out. I'm trying to find an example of that. While I'm looking for it, I'll also mention, I think I've mentioned that like TikTok has been like a really good diversion for me over the past few months. And there's this one guy I follow on TikTok who has all kinds of amazing gardening tips, like for natural pest control and for propagating plants and for natural fertilizing, just so many things. I've loved his videos, and they're so cool because they're like all a minute long, you know. I'll have to see if I can find his username and put it there in case you're interested. I really enjoy his little videos. And I've used several of the things that he's mentioned, and they've been helpful. Here we go. Okay, so this is for wild carrot, which is essentially Queen Anne's lace, I believe. What it looks like versus what wild hemlock looks like. Wild hemlock, bad. Natural or wild carrot, good. But they look similar, but you have to know how they are different. So like, he's got pictures of the good thing, then he's got the pictures of the poisonous thing that will kill you if you ingest it. So I like that about this book too. So anyway, I'm very new into reading through this, but I like it a lot so far. The last new book that I want to show you is called The Wild Dyer, because now that I've got all these plants and I'm again trying to get more into foraging, I found this book. I think it might have even been like Amazon saying, hey, you might like this book, or somebody saying that. And so I succumbed. I have not really read it yet, but the pictures are really good, and it seems like it has a lot of information that will be helpful. It's by Abigail Booth. I do have another, I think it's called The Wild Dyeing or Wild Dyer. I don't know. I'll put it in the show notes. No, this is The Wild Dyer. Oh my gosh. I don't remember what the other one, Wild Color maybe it's called. You've probably seen it. I know a lot of people have referenced it. Anyway, that's another book that I've been looking at recently just because I want to play. I've got all these marigolds. Like, I planted marigolds specifically to be able to use them to dye. And I need to figure out what I need to do with those. That, and we have zinnias like crazy right now, and I don't know if you can dye with zinnia flowers. There's so many fun colors, but I don't know if they actually would put color into yarn. So I have to figure that out too, but I want to play with that this summer. So that's been something going on, and then I kind of got the woodworking bug a couple weeks ago. My daughter's birthday's coming up, and I wanted, like I said, we're both kind of just into, like, you know, looking at tarot cards and different sort of witchy things right now. And so we were talking about runes, and I have different books about runes. That sort of grows out of my love of like Tolkien and the Lord of the Rings stories, and there's so much, you know, of that kind of thing in those books. But that's sort of where I started, where that started for me. But anyway, I thought, oh, it'd be so much fun to just make her little wooden rune tokens or something. So that's the rune for A. I put the letter on the back and then the rune on the front. So I just went out to our firewood pile and found a branch. This is just pine. And I got my bandsaw out. I've got a little tabletop bandsaw, and I cut these little discs. And then I have a small tabletop planer, and so I got it out, and I planed them and sanded them. Or not a planer, a sander, sorry. Belt sander. And so then I did the wood burning of the runes and the letters. And then I got some beeswax paste. which these have all been rubbed with the beeswax paste, but I ran out of time before she was going to be coming home from wherever she was that day to actually wipe it off and polish it. So I still have to do that. They feel a little bit tacky. But it's so cool because, okay, here's one of the discs before anything was done to, like, it hasn't been wood burned and it hasn't been polished. It's been sanded. But anyway, like, this is what it looks like. And then the wax hits it. And look how much that brings that grain out in that color. Isn't that cool? I just think that is so nifty. How much it changes it. Here's another one. This is what this looks like, and then this is sort of how it ended up looking. That same kind. I love wood and wood grain and how it does so many cool things. So anyway, that's a little project. I think I'm going to just sew her kind of like a little linen pouch to put in them. And then I have this fantasy that I'm going to like do a hand-bound little book, and I'll like write the explanations for all the runes in them. I don't know if that'll happen. But, you know. And I also want to make a little quilted table topper for her to put on the table that's in her room, because she doesn't have a whole lot of flat space in there to do much with, and I thought that would make it nicer rather than just being a plain old table. So I was starting to go down a rabbit hole the other day looking at fabric. I haven't bought any yet. I should probably do that soon. Her birthday's in a few weeks. But yeah, so that's like, I'm everywhere. Like, I'm thinking about doing so many different things. In a way, it's been kind of nice because my life is very different than what it was going to be this year. You know, there are no shows happening. All of my shows for this year have been canceled. There's one that's still out there as sort of a maybe, but from everything that I've heard from the organizers, it sounds like it's going to be canceled. And even if it's not, I will not be attending it because I don't believe it's safe to do so. So effectually, I have no shows for the rest of the year. It's really been weird because usually at this time of year I'm so knee deep, neck deep, really, not even just knee deep, in prepping for shows. Like, I'm dying all of the time. And this year it's been very different. I have not had that impetus to be doing all the dyeing. I'm still dyeing, but not, like, I'm just dyeing from my shop. And, you know, you've probably heard other dyers talk about the fact that, you know, people aren't buying yarn right now as much as they ordinarily would, which is totally understandable considering everything that's going on. So I'm trying to be responsible with how much I dye so that I don't just have, you know, stocks and stocks of yarn sitting in there that may or may not get purchased. I just don't feel like that's a responsible way to deal with my resources. On top of that, I guess we're kind of moving into shop news, such as it is. On top of that, there are shortages right now because of mills that have been closed in other parts of the world. A lot of the yarn that I dye comes from either the UK or South America, and the mills in South America were totally shut down for over 2 months, as I understand it. And so they're only now partially back up and running. So that has pushed, you know, that's starting to filter through the supply chain. You know, the stocks that my suppliers had have been purchased out, and now we're waiting for new things. I was fortunate enough that I did purchase a fairly large order early on in the shutdown or the stay-at-home stage, just because I was thinking ahead and thinking, okay, everything's shut down now, but if like, we didn't know what was going to be going on, and I thought, well, if my fall shows still happen, I still need to be able to have yarn to dye. So that was why I was able to, you know, I did buy more than I ordinarily would have at that time, looking forward to the fall, but now even that's not happening. And now, because I was also thinking, well, by that point, whatever shortages there were will probably be recouped, but they're not. Now they're really hitting. So the timing is all very off. all that to say is I am running very, very low on certain bases. So if you try to place a special order, I may not be able to accommodate it on certain bases for a while. I don't want to sell anything that I can't guarantee that I'm going to be able to get out to you. So just be aware of that. I mean, if it's in the shop right now, then that means I can accommodate it if it's a die to order thing. So you're okay that way. It's more or less just if you would contact me wanting a special order of something particular. For me right now, that would mostly be my bounce base and my Bona Fide base. Those are the two that I'm quite low on. So I've got a lot of other bases though, and intend to use those. And as soon as I can get more yarn in, I will, and that'll be fine. But I'm trying not to stress over it because it is what it is. I cannot do anything about it. I have no control over it. I know there are other dyers who are probably in worse shape than I am with their undyed yarn stock. So I'm not, trying to hoard yarn so that other people can't get it. That's not my thing. I'm just trying to act responsibly with my resources. So to that end, I was planning to introduce a new club in August that would start shipping in September, but because I don't know where I'm going to be with being able to get the yarn bases for it, I'm holding off on that. So I apologize. I don't know that I even really hinted about it before, but I often do a club in the fall, and so if you were waiting for that, I apologize. That's probably not going to happen right now, unless I do it in a totally different way than I originally planned to. I don't know. Still thinking about that. Meanwhile, I am trying to use this time to do other things. Like I said, I've got some patterns that I'm trying to write up that I figure maybe this is a good time for me to focus more on my designing rather than dyeing, since things are the way they are right now. I'm also doing some work on my website. I'm going to be adding all of my patterns that I have on Ravelry are also going to come to my website, so you'd be able to purchase them and download them from there rather than Ravelry. I am really just perplexed at the whole handling of the Ravelry accessibility issue that's been happening in the last month or so. I know I mentioned this, I think, in the last podcast about, the new design causing people a lot of neurological trauma with, headaches, eye strain, and at the very least, and then, seizures. People are literally having seizures due to some of the changes that were made on that website. It's frustrating to me when I hear things that like Ravelry's not taking that seriously. I have not firsthand had any of that information, so I'm not going to, really go into that because it's not my place to do that. But I have heard from enough people that it's an issue, and that's troubling. So I'm considering how I should handle that, not just personally, but as a business, because even though my business does not run from Ravelry, there are tie-ins. I have the Fiber Nymph Dye Works group. I run my knit-alongs and activities like that through there. My monthly makes program is, the conversation threads are there, the entry threads are there. And I know a lot of people just aren't on Ravelry anymore. So I'm trying to think of other ways that I can create community for everyone without having to rely on Ravelry. And that's more of a long-term goal. I'm hoping that by the beginning of next year, I will have something in place that I can do that. I don't want to alienate people who do still use Ravelry, but at the same time, I do want to make things accessible to everyone when it comes to my business stuff. So if you have any thoughts on that, specifically, like, how would you feel if I had a way to run future knit-alongs or the monthly makes program, but ran it through my own website as opposed to running it through Ravelry or only through Ravelry. I would be really interested in hearing your feedback. When I first got my new website, which is now almost 2 years old, I mean, one of the main priorities for that was to be able to base all of my business stuff there, instead of having it scattered about many social media places. Obviously, being tuned into social media is important. That's how you communicate with people. But I want my website to be my home base for all things business oriented. So that's what I'm working towards. So I know that was maybe sort of vague and rambly, but I would be interested in hearing any insights that you might have, or from your perspective, how you feel about that. So please feel free to leave that in the comments. I would love to know. With regard to the programs going on, Monthly Makes is still going on all year long. The first podcast I do in August, I will do the Chatter Thread winner for that. And then we have the 20 in 20 challenge, sorry. That's not a specific Fiber Nymph Dye Works thing though, but that's still ongoing throughout the year. So yeah, everything's still running. I feel like everything's sort of running autopilot right now. I am very, very behind in Ravelry posts. I have not been on Ravelry much for a number of reasons, not because I'm having seizures. That's not been an issue. I do get incredible eye strain with the new website design, so most of the time I do have it reverted back to the old Ravelry, the classic Ravelry. I just haven't been on there. I haven't been on social media much. I've just recently started posting to my personal personal Instagram account again after kind of not being there much. I haven't posted to my business account in a while, which I know is horrible as a business person, but I've needed a break. This has been a really rough year in a lot of ways. And there's some things that are going on just personally that I'm not going to go into detail with right now because I'm still processing them. Eventually I'll probably end up sharing it with you because I share everything with you eventually. It's health stuff for me, nothing dire, but it's just stuff. I'm dealing with some new medications and treatments, and it's interesting. So anyway, yeah, I've just needed to take a step back from social media, but I'm sure it'll come back around. Everything does. So anyway, I've talked to you longer than I thought I was going to, and my neighbor is still out there weed whacking almost an hour later. I'm sorry for the noise. I'll see if I can do something about it in editing. Anyway, yeah, I will add some footage that I had taken around the yard and the garden at the end here and the house. And other than that, I will see you hopefully soon-ish, in a couple of weeks, with another episode. So take care. Bye. Hi, so it's now the next day, and I've been editing what I filmed yesterday, and I realized as I was starting to look at the footage that I mentioned that I'd taken here around the yard and everything, that like it is so out of date. So I'm just going to take you on a new walk through the yard and the garden and show you some things. So let's go do that. And I will warn you up front, this is handheld video, so it's going to be a little bumpy. If that's bothersome, just be aware you might not want to watch. Maybe just listen or something. But here we are. Oh my gosh, look at the garden. Do you remember what it looked like the last time I showed it to you? It did not look like this. And if Tippy was down here right now, which I don't think she is, you probably wouldn't even be able to see her. So here's our sunflowers. Look how tall they are. See those ones over there? That one has got to be at least my height. Anyway, we'll just go around the perimeter. Our flowers are so big, and these are obviously being very overshadowed by the gargantuan squash plants. But seeing all these beautiful colors just makes me so happy. These orange marigolds right here are, I think, my favorite marigolds. They're so lovely. These ones back in here were all extras that I bought when the place that I bought plants, and I go to buy fresh produce every week. They were getting rid of like the last of their plants, so I basically rescued 3 flats of marigolds. I may have already told you about that, but they're thriving. There's a whole bunch that are actually planted under the squash plants. They were out in the open when I put them in, but the squash plants have taken them over. But they're still there and doing okay. So those are our flowers. And then my husband's just coming in, oh gosh, with a trailer full of stuff, so gotta make this fast. Anyway, these are my beans, which, like I said, they're pretty much done. I'm gonna be tearing those out soon. The basil, too, is kind of looking a little ragged. Our dill is pretty much had it. I've been pinching off the flowers, and I'm infusing vinegar with the flowers. So I've never done that before. I did it with some chive flowers this year too, which was good. So I had chive vinegar, but I thought I'd try it with the dill. So there's the sage and the chamomile that Emma has in. The cilantro is definitely gone to flower. My cilantro lasted longer this year than it ever has, though, so I'm pretty happy with that. Look at the zinnias. Look how pretty. I'm so excited. They're beautiful. I come down and I pick a few every day or every other day and put them in little vases around the house. But here we are, tomatoes. I mean, just so many tomatoes. And none of them are ripe yet. I don't remember what this variety is up here, these top 2 plants. This is one of the Mr. Stripey plants, though. Here, again, just really big tomatoes. And there's some on this plant, too. I don't know that you can see them from this angle. And then these 2 bottom plants are, oh, look, there's some ripe cherry tomatoes. These are a yellow variety. They're called jelly bean. I don't like them quite as much as the sunburst ones that I've had in the past, but they're okay. They're good. And since they're the ones that seem to want to be ripening, because there's lots and lots on there, I'll take them. But anyway, yeah, so that's all the tomatoes. And then I've got squash. So, oh my gosh, look. Here we go. There's some spaghetti squash. There's a spaghetti squash. The spaghetti squash vines have just totally encircled the whole squash area, and they've now traveled like to other areas. They're taking over some of the tomatoes. They're going down into the yard. This is actually a zucchini plant here that they're kind of all over at the moment. Okay, I'm going to try to walk through here without damaging my zinnias. There's a spaghetti squash. I don't see any zucchinis that are ready. Oh, yes, there is one. There he is. And this is like about as big as I like them to get before I pick them. Much bigger than that, and then they start to get tough and seedy. So we'll take him up to the house. What else is hiding under here? Just so much. It's like a jungle. The zucchini jungle. Yeah, I can't actually see anything else right now. This is actually the plant where I found the 2 gigantic zucchinis about a week ago. So I have to examine that one a little bit better. But anyway, it's doing pretty good. And some of the leaves are turning yellow and have some spots. But honestly, enough things are thriving that I'm not super worried about that right now. All in all, I am very, very happy with how our garden has turned out this year. And there's our finished deck. We still have the ladder out and stuff. I forget what he was doing with that. But anyway, you can see the deck. The deck's finished, the railing's up, furniture's up there. The bird feeders are now hanging up there again, so we can watch the birds. You can probably see the awning, it's rolled up. I'll put in some pictures of the awning open from up on the deck perspective. I took those a few days ago, so I can add those, but just really, really enjoying our new deck space and feeling like such a lady of leisure when I get to sit out there. Okay, so that's about it. I'm going to take me and my zucchini in the house, and now, I don't know if you can see her. Oh, there's Tippy, our little troublemaker. She's got to know what's going on. Anyway, like I said, Bill just got home with a whole bunch of stuff on a trailer, so I probably need to go see if he needs help with it. I'll talk to you again soon. Bye.